Hi, everyone. My name is Kelvin Claveria. I'm from the marketing team here at Rival Technologies and Reach3 Insights. This is Outliers. This is a live event series that we've created where we invite amazing researchers to talk about some of the hottest topics in the insights world today. Today, we're talking about the future of luxury, and I have my colleagues, Christine and Erik here. Before I bring them in officially, I just want to mention a few housekeeping items. The first one is, as you can probably tell, this is a very interactive and intimate session. So, no formal PowerPoint decks or presentations or anything like that. But we do encourage participation in the chat. So if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to share with them in the chat. If for whatever reason you're not comfortable sharing your question publicly, please feel free to slide into my DMs and I'll make sure that I cover that at the end as well. The other thing I wanted to quickly mention is that I created like a very short chat survey that kind of just ask for feedback about this event and about this series. If you can take that at the end, it literally takes a minute. I created it. I think it's pretty fun. So if you don't mind just taking that, it'll be amazing. Okay, so without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce today's guests. We have Dr. Christine Nguyen, who is Research Director at Reach3 Insights, and we have Erik Fraser, Senior Research Manager, also from Reach3. Hey, guys.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Thanks so much for your time. Yeah, to start, let's do some quick intro on the two of you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the research world and what you currently do at Reach3?
Yeah, so I can go ahead and start. Hi, I'm Christine. I'm a director at Reach3. I'm based out of Toronto. How I got into research, let's make a long story short. So I actually started off, my training is in research psychology. So mostly focusing on social and personality psychology, did that for a number of years. And then I decided to try my hand at this whole consumer research thing, and I've stuck with it ever since. At Reach3, I do a variety of qualitative and quantitative work, mostly with CPG and retail clients. And I'm also very involved in these sorts of marketing and thought leadership things like the future of luxury.
And I think similar to Christine and a lot of people who work in market research, I also just kind of stumbled into the market research field. Coming, for me, it was from government and public policy, and just got quickly frustrated with the pace of government work, and then moved into market research, appreciated the pace, and have stuck with it ever since. And like Christine, I'm working a lot in the CPG space, but I have a pretty strong background in doing a lot of tech research for some of the big tech companies, but currently doing work in CPG, retail, and travel and hospitality.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for that intro. Now, really, we're here to talk about the future of luxury today. So let's dive in. Last year, your team conducted a study on the future of luxury. You engaged almost 1,000 Americans, and almost half of them were Gen Zs, to find out what luxury meant to them. Give us some background on the study. What motivated you to do it? Your methodology, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. So at the time last year, when we started thinking about this study, it was like probably spring, summer when we started thinking about it. It was at this really interesting time where we were thinking a lot about like the rising cost of living. So that was starting to come up. It's still a big deal, but then it was starting to come up. People were starting to get concerned. And it was something that was something our clients were really thinking about as well. Like, how does this impact their consumers and their consumer psychology, their consumers' behaviors? But at the same time that all this cost of living stuff was going on, we were also seeing like all those pandemic restrictions lifting. So people were traveling again, they were seeing friends again, having parties again. And so we had this kind of dynamic where it was like, let's hit the pause button because cost of living is going up. We're worried about that. But then we also have the other side of things where it's like, the pandemic is lifting, yay, let's go do some stuff. Let's go spend some money. Let's go buy some stuff. So at that time, we were just seeing this kind of conflict and we were wondering, okay, how does this affect consumers generally, but also zeroing in on that luxury space. Luxury is luxury. It's not something we need to survive. It's not, the bottom of the hierarchy of needs that we absolutely must have. But it's something that makes life great for a lot of people. It's something that many people live for. So we wanted to see the dynamic here, like those conflicts. How does that impact what consumers think about luxury, what they expect from luxury, and what they need brands to do? So that's where broader this research came from. But specifically, you mentioned we had quite a large sample of younger consumers, the Gen Zs. So we talked to many people all across the board, but the Gen Zs are what we're focusing on today. And we made sure to have a large sample of them because many of our clients are wondering about that group. They're like, how do we talk to Gen Z? How do we find out about them? So we wanted to make sure that we included them in this study to really look at the luxury consumer of tomorrow. And what we did was we had a conversational survey. If you haven't seen Reach3's conversational approach, we leverage Rival Tech, and the survey looks like you're chatting with a friend, which helps to really lower that kind of barrier for people that kind of like, oh, it's research. I need to be in research mode. I need to say and do things in a particular way. Keeping it conversational helped us to really take down people's barrier there and get at real feedback, real thoughts. We included typical like point and click questions, but also we had video so people could opt to actually tell us what they feel about luxury, which was really great to get to hear from consumers.
Yeah, great. And you guys did a webinar, a more formal webinar about this, sharing all of your different findings. So we'll share that with this group after as well, just so they can watch that if they want to. One thing that I found surprising was regarding the motivations of Gen Zs and actually Americans in general when it comes to luxury. Your research shows that intrinsic factors, things like rewarding yourself or making yourself happy, those are more important to people than external factors such as showing off to others, that classic conspicuous consumption deal. This finding is very important for luxury marketers. Could you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, sure. We did see across a lot of the different demos that trend of like moving towards intrinsic factors, but particularly in Gen Z, things like going to luxury retail sources to make yourself feel happy we were seeing higher rates amongst Gen Z. Things like doing it to make yourself feel good. Also like a dip, like some on the lower end of things that they're reasons they're not going buying luxury items, or things like fitting in with friends, showing off brands to friends. I am a millennial. I think back to when I was younger and like people were like walking around showing up with their Louis Vuitton, or like that one girl in your high school showed up with her Louis Vuitton like backpack, and everybody was like, oh, this girl's the coolest in the world. It's going by the wayside. It's not as important. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing and like feeling with a lot of this group, and what sometimes gets confused, is there's like a difference. They're sometimes seen like Gen Z are seen as like, oh, well, they only care about themselves. But I think there's a difference between caring about other people and also caring about what other people think. And what Gen Z is doing really well is they're stopping and slowly less and less caring about what other people think of them, and they're focusing in on their own self, which is good. It's like self-confidence. They still care about other people. They just aren't as worried about what other people are thinking. So they're investing in these luxury items, these more expensive items, things that bring them joy, these like singular pieces, as a way to like have a little bit more self-fulfillment, do a little bit more self-expression of personal style. They want things that they feel look good, not necessarily something that's going to get them heads turning in the high school.
Right. Yeah, definitely I agree. It's probably a good a good change. Now,
Yeah.
your research looked at luxury from the point of view of three verticals in particular: retail, beauty, and travel. What's remarkable, though, I thought was there were actually common themes that emerged among those three. So Gen Zs seem to really value quality, experience, both in person and virtual, and sustainability. Any thoughts on why those three came up again and again?
Yeah, definitely agree that it was interesting to see those particular themes keep coming up regardless of the category. And I think this speaks to like, regardless of luxury being very different in travel versus in retail versus beauty, there are still certain things that are important to Gen Zs across the whole board. So there's this like consistency. And definitely with quality was one of the ones that came up across. I think that makes sense because regardless of the category, like luxury costs money. And for Gen Zs, a lot of Gen Zs don't have like tons and tons of money right now. But if they're going to spend their money on a luxurious product, a luxurious experience, it better give them something, right? It better be high quality. It better be worth the money. So I think that's true across verticals. Another thing you mentioned was just the experience. There's a certain experience that they expect from luxury products and services. So like we were talking about, it's not just the brand name, it's not just the label, but it's how the products make you feel. And experiential is really important to the younger consumer. They've been exposed to more experiential marketing, more experiential things like that. So they're looking for luxury products across the board, luxury experiences across the board to offer something that's not just the product. It has to make you feel a certain way, give you something to do, give you something to experience. And then last one, sustainability. I was like, I know there's one more. Sustainability. We've definitely been hearing a lot about the Gen Z consumer and the importance of sustainability causes, social causes. Just generally, we hear that a lot. So our finding here is just that those, the Gen Z kind of need and importance of sustainability translates to products as well. They're saying they want those luxury products to also be good for the environment. And that may look different when we're talking about the different verticals, like sustainable travel will look different than sustainable beauty, but it is a part of the definition of what luxury should be. So it's really those Gen Z values that are coming across all across categories.
And Christine, you kind of like, I mean, touched on it a bit, but it's luxury retail can kind of almost becomes an avenue for sustainability, and like you can kind of tweak it in your brain of like, if I'm buying something that's going to be, I'm paying $200 for because it's really well made and I'm only going to buy it once for the next 5-10 years, this is going to last me. It's that greater awareness of fast fashion that's coming up, and just like throwaway clothes and stuff there. It's buying that high quality item that's going to last long is a way to combat that, like the cycle of fast fashion that's going through.
That's a really great point, that it's kind of like interwoven. You know, I've actually heard recently, I hadn't heard this before, might have been late, but I heard someone say like the 30 wear challenge. Are you going to wear this thing at least 30 times? 30 seems low to me, but it's like, it's there. It's like a challenge to only invest in the clothing that you think will last and that you think you will actually wear. So that's another example of kind of interweaving it in.
Be bad news for Vera Wang's wedding line.
30 also seems low to me.
It does seem low, doesn't it?
It
Like,
does.
that's not too challenging.
For travel, you found that local experiences and authenticity are important as well. Although Gen Zs, interestingly, still want traditional perks of an all-inclusive resort. So I guess they want to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Why is authenticity important to Gen Z travelers? Does it, speak to the fact that they're the most diverse cohort ever? Perhaps it's because they grew up exposed to different cultures. Maybe it's just about getting cred and pictures for Instagram. What is it?
It's got to be a little bit of both. I think, like you said, they are a more multicultural generation. They're being exposed to more places digitally, and that's increasing awareness and a desire to travel more. But I also do think that you can't ignore the fact that there is a social element, and we did see some signs of that. And like in my experience, it's also something that's typically underreported, or when you ask people directly, like, oh, are you going to this vacation spot because it'll look good in your social channels? A lot of people are going to say no, even if the answer is yes. But I think the reason that this authentic travel experience is coming up is because social media has now just kind of been a battle for like novel content. You want to be the first person to show that like unique cheese bath in Holland, or like this like really weird experience that nobody else has, because everybody has a picture in front of the Eiffel Tower. You can't go to Paris and put like that be your picture anymore if social media is important for you. So that's where that like novel, by immersing yourself in these like authentic experiences, eating at like more local establishments, visiting local travel or like venues, that's where you're going to get those more novel moments that become more shareable. And then on the flip side, like you mentioned, we did see there still is a high demand for these all-inclusive resorts, and that I'm guessing that also ties into the intrinsic elements and like the values that are coming through, is that there is still a demand of like, okay, vacation doesn't necessarily have to be go, travel, like see all these different things. Sometimes I need time to dedicate towards myself, to relax, and to just like decompress. And I think the draw of all-inclusive resorts has always been that like just you don't have to worry about anything, but there are still those added layers that kind of you mentioned earlier around like sustainability becoming more attractive for this group when it comes to things like those traditional things like all-inclusive resorts.
Great. Yeah, amazing. Now in beauty, you found that in addition to the other factors that we mentioned before, so sustainability, experiences, and quality, inclusivity is also important. What does that mean in this context?
Yeah, I thought that was one of the coolest findings we had in this study. Lots of cool findings, but one of the coolest ones in this one was just the need for marketing to be inclusive. And what that means here is for the Gen Zs, it seems to be marketing that shows people that look like them. So this generation, there's a Pew report just saying they're the most racially, ethnically diverse of the cohorts. There's just a lot of multiculturalness there. And there is a need then and a need to really see people who represent real people. So for marketing campaigns to have people of different skin colors, to have different identities represented, and just the products as well to appeal to a large swath of people, to not be excluding people. So one of the examples is Fenty just having lots of different shades, like I think 40 different shades or something, but that is something that this generation is looking for, is to include people in marketing, but also to be inclusive as far as who can buy this product, who can use this product.
Right. Yeah, I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the chat. If you're willing to go online as well, we're happy to facilitate that. I would love for you to speculate a bit on the future as well. So Gen Zs, they're getting older. Everyone is, I guess, and they're moving to different new life stages. How will the pandemic, the high inflation rate, and then the economic downturn shape their motivations moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to speculate, I think there's a couple of things to note. Is like one, this Gen Z is like the future of luxury. They're not there yet. They're right now only like, I think at Mac, there's a report by Bain last year that the estimates like they've got like 20% of the market share right now, and by 2030, they're still not like millennials will still be 50% of the market. So we're not in a huge rush. They're definitely a growing group, but what the pandemic has shown, I think like luxury has always been known as a very highly elastic market. It like once inflation starts setting in, once we slip into recessions, luxury purchases are the first to go. But then they're one of the first ones to bounce back when we return. But what the pandemic showed, I think it was a bit more of a unique experience because of the the income discrepancy that exists, like especially in North America. You had people who were just like sitting on these like growing nests of cash. So the luxury market didn't dip as much as it did. But I think as we move forward into this, I mean, potential recession, I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see some of those more intrinsic factors continuing, especially as this generation gets older. I don't think they're going to stop caring. It doesn't look like they're going to stop caring about sustainability. It doesn't look like they're going to stop caring about authenticity. Another interesting thing that's been coming out recently is that the luxury customer is getting younger. So if you survey millennial, like when was the last time or when was your first luxury purchase? Yeah, like the age was starting around 17. Gen Z, that's going down to 15. So people, the age of the actual shopper, so even as our Gen Z is getting older, they'll be buying more, but also that market is expanding. You've got younger and younger customers that are entering this market. So I think there's definitely a case to start planting those seeds and figuring out how you're going to leverage that need for authenticity, that need for sustainability, that need for quality moving forward.
Yeah, and just one thing to add on to that, just with the cost of living being so top of mind right now, is that because prices are so high, it's kind of one of those things where it could be harder for certain consumers to do that kind of aspirational luxury purchase. So it may not be something that they can purchase all the time, but maybe a Gen Z consumer can purchase like one luxury thing that they really, really want, and that brings them into the market, into the brand, but they may not be purchasing this like every single time because of money. But if they purchase this one luxury product from whatever brand, that brand has that one chance to get it right. It's not like they're going to have another chance next week, like groceries or something like that. But they have that one chance or a few chances to get it right. And I think that's why brands need to pay attention to these emerging trends as far as what Gen Z wants from luxury.
I do want to just like lastly add, Christy, like one of the nice things about this research that we found is that luxury doesn't necessarily mean cost. And Gen Z's opinion of what a luxury product is changing. They're like, we saw a consensus that like what they think of a luxury product is evolving, and it's going away from things like price to things like product quality, exclusivity. If you think of in the last year, the Telfar bags, not that expensive comparatively. Like you can get a nice bag for $150 vegan leather. But they've kind of cracked into this luxury market and are like just by leveraging that exclusivity. They do like very long-term, like short single batch orders. You have to wait a long time for your product. They're building this like anticipation and this like reputation based around exclusivity and product quality, and not necessarily leveraging that traditional aspect of price that's been tied to the market.
Yeah, great. And as I mentioned, you guys did a more formal webinar about this, so we'll definitely share that out because you went through a lot of that as well. Yeah, just a reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. In the meantime, I have a couple more questions. Going back to experiences, you mentioned both in-person and virtual experiences are important. One thing that came out of your research, though, is that brands can actually do more to connect both of those experiences. Can you share some examples of brands who are doing that well, combining the virtual and the in-person?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of brands at least trying to do this now, because shoppers are shopping in so many different ways and engaging with brands in so many different ways. The one that came to mind was Fenty. I know I've already mentioned them, but maybe it's because I have Rihanna on the brain. But they're, at stores, people know that they can get like products, of course, so that's there, but they also have these social media campaigns. Like there was the Fenty Face contest where the consumers could submit a video of how they use the product or their favorite looks to be the next face of Fenty. So kind of integrating those touch points, I think that they do a really good job of.
Do you have anything, Erik?
No, I mean, I don't know if you spent any time in the metaverse. There are brands that are doing it quite well. There are also some that are doing it quite poorly. And I think that would be my one recommendation is I think it's worthwhile investing in understanding how your digital experience is going to be received before launching it, or you risk having going to see some ghost towns of brands in the metaverse that are just have never been interacted with. And would be a pretty poor investment from my perspective.
Awesome. Now Sergio has a question. Sergio, do you mind? Do you want to go online, or do you want me to just ask the question for you?
Sure.
Oh,
I'm just trying to figure out a little bit of the relationship between the luxury, specifically in athleisure, which I work a lot with multicultural audiences, so we are seeing that social badge identity show off or exploration that they're having with the clothing, specifically with athleisure clothes because of the sports athletes, role models, aspirations, and fandoms. In luxury in particular, I wonder, what do you see there? How do you see that relationship by featuring or expressing identity with this type of luxury brands?
Are you asking for specific athletes, or just in general, the need to tie athleisure to that self-representation and that diversity?
In general, there's an insight that the minority groups tend to aspire to be athletes in order to get out of the struggles,
right?
Go for scholarships and all the path to the celebrity athlete that they follow, right? But the first indications and the first expressions of this is starting to imitate the where they dress up and using those brands, those things. That's what you see in hip hop, reggaeton, and all these type of things, right? So I don't know if you have something on the relationship with these clothes or these ways of expressing their identity.
mhm.
So in this particular study, we don't have a data point on that, but happy to speculate if you're happy to listen. So as far as, well, not exactly with celebrities and things like that, but with certain brands of athleisure, I'm thinking Lululemon, just really top of mind. There's this identity that's associated with using Lululemon pants, and I'm going to talk about the yoga pants just because that's one of my hobbies. But there's this kind of, if you leverage that brand, if you use that brand, it'll inform your practice, and that kind of goes into the whole identity. Like if I use Lululemon, I'm a more serious practitioner just because they're so associated with that piece. But as far as celebrities using certain brands, so if you see a celebrity using Nike shoes and you're aspiring to be an athlete, there's just that mental association with trying to get closer to what you want to be. in any way to get closer. It brings you psychologically closer, and it also kind of gives you this boost of confidence as well. So that last piece is certainly speculative and kind of tying into psychology, things outside of what we're talking about today, but speculating. It's an interesting question, though, that we would like to look into.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the things that came up earlier, sustainability, for example, that kind of ties back to identity as well, right? Like, if I'm buying a sustainable product, that says something about me. So yeah, I think there's definitely more there that we can probably explore in a future research study. Okay, Kristen has this question about home ownership. Kristen, would you like to ask a question?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Really excited to chat with you guys about Gen Z. I work for a home improvement company, and we're curious as Gen Z becomes a larger share of homeowners. I know not as many are homeowners as there are millennials, but as we begin to track these individuals and their purchasing behavior and, what's important to them, not just in terms of product quality, but like, what are their priorities in the home? Like, how does that play into the products that they're buying, the home improvement projects that they're doing when they go to buy a home? Like, what's more important? Is it location? Is it size of home? Is it, community? Like, we have so many questions on how they will be making those decisions, because we're expecting, just based on purchasing behavior, it'll be a lot different than millennials, and we want to be ready for that. So it's a question about products they'll be buying for the home, but also how they'll be making decisions for those home improvement projects.
Yeah, so I mean, we tried, like, the research that we did focused on those 3 channels that we mentioned earlier, but you can still take some of these lessons that we learned from the thoughts of luxury and apply them to space like this. I mean, if I was going to be making some predictions, I think you're going to be seeing, like you already mentioned it, like sustainability and quality, like those, they're going to be making, there's going to be a willingness to spend that extra money to buy like the hardwood floors rather than the like laminate. They're going to be splurging on things that they know are going to last. When it comes to furniture, it's going to be looking for things that are going to allow for that self-expression. They're going to be willing to go to the like local boutique store. They're going to be looking for local artisans who are actually making furniture directly and buying those individual pieces directly are going to be becoming more important. I think from a larger retailer perspective, I think the sustainability one is a big piece that could be leveraged in terms of like highlighting the length of the product life cycle, showing the way, also like things you mentioned, lighting, showing things around like efficiency. I think if you were going to survey them or Gen Z right now about what they cared about, and if they were looking for a home, they're going to want something like an efficient home. They're going to want insulated. They're going to want something that's going to keep their energy bills down, and they're also their carbon impact down. You talk a little bit about location as well, and I would guess is like that self-expression part comes into there as well, because they're going to be wanting to live in either communities or spaces that allow them to live that lifestyle. If there's like to be out and about, they're going to be looking at more urban, but as we know, buying urban in downtown is a lot harder than it used to be. So what we saw in the pandemic with a lot of millennials, I'm guessing it wouldn't be surprising to see a similar, say, where you've suddenly got people flocking to semi-urban communities and building those, like buying those homes there and building that dream home in a semi. Place. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think some of the other themes as well, like inclusivity, for example, and authenticity, those might also come in. So they're going to be looking for probably like smaller or like artists or artisans that are sort of not as mainstream. I think the opportunity there is like maybe storytelling, right? Like highlighting those artists, highlighting those people in your marketing as well, and making sure that those people are actually diverse as well, and they kind of represent the Gen Z, or like they look like the Gen Z cohort. That would be my speculation.
Great, thank you.
All right. Any last second questions here? I know we're at time, so hopefully you guys
I think
have
there's one from Rita in the chat.
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry, I almost missed that. Would you like to go online, Rita?
Yeah, I'll jump in and I'll be really quick.
Oh,
So I'm in the energy efficiency sustainability industry. Erik kind of answered the question when he spoke about energy efficiency and things like that. So my question, so I want to pivot from that. And is this, given that the Gen Zs are environmentally conscious, into energy efficiency, expect energy efficiency in their homes and their lives, etc. Having been in this industry for quite a while now, I know that things related to sustainability, environmental consciousness, energy efficiency, etc., those actually comes with an incremental cost. Are we saying that the Gen Zs are prepared to pay for that incremental cost? And are they at a level where they believe that their how they earn the money is going to be enabling them to pay for that incremental cost for things that resonates with them value-wise in terms of environmental consciousness?
I'm sorry, Christina. I just like
No, go ahead.
that I would also like just highlight is I think we've got two different groups here too. Is like there's Gen Z, you've got the people who are going to have the money to buy luxury. There's still always going to be obviously Gen Z or like people who are not going to be able to afford the more expensive option.
Yep.
I think what this research was kind of showing us is that the things that if you're going to be spending 10 grand on something, it's now a little bit, it's less about that status symbol. And now there's more intrinsic factors. So things that are important to me. So things that are like, there is a subset of people who are going to be willing to spend an extra $5,000 for a carbon offset piece or for something that they know is going to have a smaller environmental impact. They might be buying if they're going to buy a $50,000 car, they might buy a Tesla rather than, I don't know how much a Tesla costs, but they're going to buy they might choose to buy a $50,000 electric vehicle that might not look as flashy rather than buying a $50,000 like SUV, because that sustainability factor is now carrying a bit more weight than say the status symbol used to be. Christine, were you going to add something?
That covers it well, but one other thing that I want to bring up from this research is that we kind of looked at luxury in like, what is a luxury product today? And then what do you want from a luxury product within the three verticals that we focused on? And like sustainability is coming up most strongly in the what do you want? So there's still that need there. There's still a space. And we didn't particularly ask like, would you pay more for it here? That's actually something we're looking at coming up in a study that we're doing. But just knowing that the Gen Zs want to see sustainability across these categories tells us there's an interest there. And as they start to spend more, especially on luxury products, it'll be something that they would be considering as well.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for asking that question, Rita. Yeah, so that really brings us at the end here. Any last thoughts, Erik or Christine, that you want to share?
This was great.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I think on the deck that you'll share out, you have our contact information in that. So so definitely reach out if you have any questions or follow-up.
Yeah, or LinkedIn as well. I know if you
LinkedIn.
sign up for this event, you probably saw a post. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for your time. Next week, we'll be back with Amy Merritt from HubSpot to talk about how you build an in-house market research team. Until then, have a great week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.